To a very important data point that I want to spend some time on, which is that now more Indian students are going to the US for higher studies as against China. And this is a change that has happened, a trend change after 15 long years. International students essentially were coming from India and China, and in the last 15 years, more from China. But that trend has been bucked this year. India has emerged as the top source of international students in the US. Over 330,000 Indian students enrolled during the 2023-24 academic year. This is a 23% jump compared to the last year, as per the data coming in from Open Doors report on international educational exchange. The surge was primarily driven by graduate programs. It's a 19% jump that has taken place, totaling nearly 197,000 students. Indian participation in the optional practical training program has risen by 40%. Over 98,000 students are in fact benefiting from it. China has slipped now to second place, and there's been a 4% drop that has taken place in its student numbers, about 277,000. Now, despite this, China still leads in the undergrad and the non-degree program category. The US hosted, remember, a record-breaking 1.1 million international students last year. Contributes about $50 billion to its economy. It's a huge source of foreign exchange for it as far as Department of Commerce data is concerned. And the US continues to be a very important and a premier destination for global education. And India's growing presence is a very important shift in that trend. But what happens when there is Donald Trump coming into office? Remember, his entire election plank has been about anti-immigration. How will his office make the distinction between students coming in for degree and graduate programs and the rest of the immigration numbers? Remember, everything gets lost in election rhetoric, but hopefully policy decisions by an administration also manages to distinguish it from election rhetoric. And let's get in Sudhanshu Kaushik to tell us more about this. He's an executive director, North American Association of Indian Students, joining me from Chicago to talk more about this trend. First of all, Sudhanshu, it's early morning for you. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope you can hear me.
My first question, that this trend that has changed in 15 years, what is the larger ramification of this? How do you read this on ground in universities?
Look, you're going to continue seeing this upwards trends. In the next 3 to 4 years, experts estimate the number of international Indian students in the United States is expected to hit of over 500,000. And that's both undergraduate and graduate. Like you correctly said, we've seen an increase in graduate students, but we have not been able to see an increase as much in undergraduate students, which is also expected to increase as tier 2, tier 3 international students within India are exposed to the curriculum, to the education, and also the opportunities that are available within the United States. Now, what I see is that when I'm in the United States, whether at first, last 5 years, you would see a lot of people.
Okay. All right. Sudhanshu, before I get back to you, I want to first also tell our viewers that some of this data point is reflective of the mood in the students community of the last 1 year. Remember, the education process and the admission cycle is about 12 months in making. So it takes that much time. So a lot of this is reflective of the mood 12 months or 18 months back. But Sudhanshu, let me ask you this. How do you see this trend at a time when the mood in America has changed? It's changed dramatically against immigration. Will they be able to make that distinction between international students and rest of the immigrants?
Look, I preface this by saying that NAIS in the previous Trump administration fought a case of.
Okay. Okay, I think there's a bit of a technical snag at Sudhanshu's end. We'll try and fix this, but to tell our viewers, as I said, two important aspects of this trend needs further detailing and further look at. One, what happens to this trend going forward? As I said, this is reflective of a mood 12 months back. And point number two, Sudhanshu said that maybe in a couple of years, the Indian students could actually end up being 500,000. What does that mean? Does it mean that there could be special separate programs for and targeting Indian students? Sudhanshu, you were making a point about Donald Trump being in office.
I was saying is that, we had a case against Donald Trump's previous administration and against their international student ban that was there in 2020, 2021. That being said, I think that we need to clarify the rhetoric against, legal immigration based off student or work versus the undocumented immigration that's been happening specifically in the past 4 years via India. The rhetoric or the policies that, whether it's a Tom Homan or a Stephen Miller coming in place, is against the undocumented, the illegal people from North India that are coming in on the basis of, the connections, etc., and crossing the border. The Trump administration has gone on record to say that we want skilled immigration. We want students from India. Literally, he said, India to come and study and hopefully be able to, take and involve themselves in and contribute to the economy. So I think there's a distinction between the rhetoric of undocumented illegal and documented student visas coming. And I don't think documented students have anything to fear about that.
You mentioned that this number is set to grow going forward. So do you think the policies are going to be more favorable under a Trump administration?
So I don't know if it's going to be favorable or not favorable under a Trump administration, but colleges are the ones who are making this happen. Look, in the past 5 years, they've let go of GRE GMATs. They have a lot of recruiting and resourcing happening in tier 2, tier 3 villages in India. So it's the colleges, the university administration.
All right, that is where it's really happening. Colleges are making it happen where Indian students can come in larger numbers. It could be the smaller towns, the tier 2, tier 3 cities where this trend could in fact increase going forward.